I'd like to start with welcomes, introductions and safety. And just to cover the safety issue, no fire alarm is expected, but if we do hear one, we should exit the building by the main entrance, go down the ramp to the right and assemble in front of the cathedral. In terms of introductions, I'm Councillor Martin Fodor, Chair of the committee, and I have to welcome and introduce a new Vice Chair to the committee. Would you like to go ahead?
Thank you very much. I'm Kirsty Tate, Vice Chair.
Would the other members like to introduce themselves?
Yeah, Councillor Kai Dodd, Southmead Ward.
Councillor Tom Maynard, Horfield Ward.
And another new member, a new member of the committee. Thanks for attending.
Tim Kent, Hangrover, Whitchurch Park Ward.
Councillor Abby Finch, St George Central Ward.
Councillor Izzy Russell, Ashley Ward.
Councillor James Crawford, Bishopston and Ashley Down Ward.
Councillor Mark Weston from the glorious Henbury and Brentry Ward.
Thank you very much indeed. And also welcome to those in the public gallery and also those watching the meeting on the web. Okay, so item number 2 is apologies for absence and substitutions, but although we've had some changes, we have no substitutions. But I would like to just put on the record my thank you to the outgoing Vice Chair who's now left the committee, Councillor Ellie King, and thank her for her constructive contributions and the fact she's always been very keen to collaborate in the work of the committee as Vice Chair, and that's obviously what the public expect of us, and I've sort of welcomed her input. Thank her for that service. So agenda item number 3 is declarations of interest. Do any of the members of committee have any declarations of interest? No? Thank you very much indeed. Item 4 is the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any queries about the record in those minutes, or can we move to approve them as the record of the meeting? No concerns? Would anyone like to second that?
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Okay. Chair's announcements. I do actually have a few announcements because there's been some very interesting recent events. So I'd just like to run through a few things that have been going on in the background, which you may have missed. For instance, I'm delighted to hear that our new council home to school transport service has been listed as finalist nationally for their introduction of an electric vehicle fleet. At our last meeting, we did discuss the promotion of electric vehicle use by the council. And on the theme of the awards, I'm happy to announce that our contractor Bristol Waste have won 2 national awards in the last month. They won the LARAC, which is the Local Authority Award, for the Hartcliffe Way Household Reuse and Recycling Centre, which we've set up. And they were also shortlisted for their coffee pod recycling and nappy collection service in those awards. And they won a 2nd national award from APSI, the public service body, as a prize for tackling hard-to-recycle materials with their nappy recycling trial in the city as well. So good news, all their achievements and their learnings from that. I'm also glad to see progress towards new or expanded solar farms in the city in partnership with our joint venture, City Leap. All the councillors have been involved in those developments, and each area should get a community fund from the project. So look out for news of those proposals, which helps us expand the renewable energy generation in the city. And next week, another matter from the committee was our youth-led climate action grants, which we were able to issue a total of £100,000 of youth-led climate action grants to projects around the city. And the 2nd and larger round of those awards is being celebrated next week, and I'm certainly looking forward to hearing what they've been up to with our support. I'm really glad we've been able to help them. And finally, there will be news of tackling fly tipping in the city with the Keep Britain Tidy fly tipping fortnight coming soon, but I can't preempt the announcements on that particularly. And thanks to ITV, who have recorded input from Bristol for their broadcast to go along with the conference, the UN conference on climate, which will probably go out next week on Monday. So it's been busy. We've now got our agenda for today, and to start the meeting, we do have public forum. So thank you for those who've made submissions. We had 3 questions from Suzanne Audrey, but she hasn't attended. But we have had 3 questions from Dr. Christina Biggs. Would you like to, you've had some responses to those questions. Would you like to comment or query any of those responses, Christina? Thanks for your interest.
I'm very, very sorry, but I haven't actually seen them. I saw the email come in and I haven't checked it. Do you mind just reading out what the answers were and then I can comment? Thank you. Oh, all right, hang on. I've got a piece of paper here. Right. Yeah, I've got it. Thank you.
Shall we come back to you in a moment? We've also...
Shall I do my statement and then I'll come back to you?
Okay, if you'd like to start with the statement. You've also tabled. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think what's troubling in this report of the Clean Air Zone is that it looks as if the pollution is actually getting worse in the centre of Bristol, but the pollution is getting better overall. So what we think is the reason for this is that, yes, the Clean Air Zone has driven people to change their vehicles, because we see it's gone from 6% down to 4%, which is brilliant. And actually, officers raised this right at the start. They said the whole reason for having the Clean Air Zone extend out to Cumberland Basin was to force fleet change. And that has happened. 6%, 4% is massive. So I think that is a reason why overall pollution's gone down, because people are just driving cleaner vehicles around the whole of Greater Bristol. But then we have this increase of pollution in the centre. It's actually increased, it's got worse. And it's not just a tiny area, it's Park Street, Colston Street, Rupert Street and Bond Street, that whole centre of Bristol. The galleries seem to have got better, which is great, but we're getting, it's illegal and deepening. And so my analysis is that it's not the 4% of vehicles who are now non-compliant, it's actually the 96% of vehicles. Well, there's actually 4% vehicles that are clean, but they're not clean, they're compliant. They're just compliant, not clean. And then there's a 2% which are exempt. So the exempt vehicles obviously could be polluting as well. But I think my suggestion is that we go for the 94% of legally compliant vehicles who are nevertheless polluting our city. So I think the step to take now is get tougher and actually start thinking about the whole fleet, not just your 4%. So rather than putting the charges up, which is punishing a 4% to maybe reduce slightly less, we don't know, but actually the 94%, we can do this with road space removal. So Park Street, we're very pleased about Park Street. Busgate, the Bristol Busgate's been, the Bristol Bridge Busgate has been brilliant. Let's carry on doing that. I know it's not popular, but how else are we going to solve this pollution problem in the centre of Bristol? We've got schools there. We've got St Michael's on the St Michael on the Northgate, I think it's called. No, St Michael, you know where that is, yeah. But you've got St Mary Redcliffe. It's a crisis, and that's why we've asked in our questions, please find out how many juveniles are now going to hospital for asthma. Please, let's just find that out. Let's just get the health statistics out there and just face this problem head on, okay? So you could do a congestion charge like in London. I know that's not within the remit of the CAS, but...
I'm sorry, Andy, it's not the remit of this committee itself
exactly,
either.
Yeah. So I'm just suggesting, don't put the charges up. I think you're just punishing a small percentage and it probably won't do anything. Let's go for road space removal. Electric buses. Let's demotorway the M32. Okay, you can pass a recommendation on. Let's stop the M32 just injecting pollution straight into the centre of Bristol. You should have a park and ride on M32. Trams down the M32. Why do we not even have any park and ride on the M32? Why are we letting these cars go right into the middle and then oh dear, there's nowhere to go, so let's just sit there and pollute the place, okay?
Can we come to
Yeah.
can we come to your questions in a moment? But
Yeah, I'll just-
or would you like to hear the other statement and then?
Yeah, I'll
we'll
just have a
come
look
to
at the, yeah, so
Thank you.
that is my statement. as it
Thank
were.
you very much.
And in terms of questions,
Shall we come back to you in a minute? Shall we come back to you in a minute while
it,
you've
it
actually
looks
read
to me
them?
that you're not looking, you're considering it and you're saying, let's do it, but yes, let's do it, please. Get the health metrics out there. The CAS ratio, which you probably know about, your 300 deaths, 8.5%. Let's just calculate that again. Has it got worse? Has it got better? Let's be realistic about this. Don't try and spin this in any way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also have a statement received from David Redgewell. Would you like to?
Yeah, thanks very much. So,
Thank you.
in principle, we support the CAS. As you know, we've been working on it for quite a few years in the public transport user groups and disability groups. So, like Tina, we have concerns. I mean, our major concern is around the hospitals. The hospitals are regional hospitals for South West England. Whether we close Park Street has been an interesting debate, because if we divert that traffic past the major hospitals, including the Children's Hospital, Heart Institute, Cancer Institute, that is a real concern to a number of us at the moment. But if we're to deal with the polluting cars in the city centre, which we have to deal with, and polluting lorries, the buses are getting cleaner, but they're funded by UK government and the mayor. That they're not funded by First. They put some money in, but all these new buses have the West of England Combined Authority logos on the side, and they also have North Somerset Council. So just to be clear where that money comes from, 60% of all revenue for public transport now comes from UK government, the rest from local government. So we need to look at alternatives. So I might take a different view. My also is taking a different view to Tina's probably, is that if we're to, we're not anti-car, you know, we're pro-public transport, we're not anti-car. And the issue is, if you provide alternatives to the car, whether that is bus services, which City Council's doing through the Combined Authority, because it is not a transport authority, it has to use the Combined Authority to facilitate that, Martin. And also, you know, we put money into local rail, like the Severn Beach line, and we offer alternatives like Portway Park and Ride, which I know the former mayor was keen on, I know you were. But we've got to carry on with that programme. And if that has to be, we put the price up, I'm all for that, because we need to have the money. And this is where the CAS agreement with central government is that the money comes back in transport schemes. So the money has to come back. This is not the Transport Authority. Ed can do some negotiations. Tim Ribbon can do some negotiations. But it goes to the mayor with North Somerset to decide how we do it. And the issue is we need to use some of that money to maintain bus services and improve bus services. So we offer real choices. We have a crisis coming in March if the UK government don't fund the bus service improvement grants. And also we don't put the levy up by about £15 million from the 4 UAs, not just Bristol. So clean air is very important. We've got to stop those polluting cars coming into the city centre. I will plead the point that we do need to have access to the hospital for disabled people. It's not an easy hospital to get to. There's not much public transport gets there. So we do need exemptions on disabled people. And when we have motorway closures and rail replacement services, then exemptions for those need to be in place. That's a difficult thing, but we need to do that because we need to move people. But as a whole, it's getting cleaner, but I'm still very concerned about that clean air in Greater Bristol. The Greater Bristol clean air is not good. As Tina points out, the city centre is getting better in parts. The hospital sends me alarm and red bells, and I have real concerns about Park Street at the moment, not because I don't want to close Park Street and put Busgate in, but because where you divert the traffic to, and if you put the traffic past the hospitals, when you've got sick children coming from Cornwall, Devon, Dorset, Gloucestershire, Wiltshire, the whole southwest, Heart Institute patients and cancer patients, we've got an issue we need to think through carefully with the integrated care board for the region. But as a whole, please push ahead with this. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of opposition. There always is. They'll come out the woodwork as normal. But I think if we're going to sell this message to people in Greater Bristol and the adjoining Somerset and Gloucestershire areas, The message has got to be you have an alternative. You have a train service. We're putting money into bus services. You can walk, you can cycle. But if we haven't got that alternative, where these are successful, clean air zones, is because those councils or those combined mayoral authorities have put money into alternatives. And that's the big message today. I wouldn't like to see motorists clobbered by £14 if we're not able to say, you can use the bus, you can use Metro West trains. We're working with the mayor to make sure we've got that. And then there needs to be a conversation between Tim Rippington again and Ed Plowden to see how we put that money together and with the other 3 unitary authorities.
Okay, thank you, David. Thanks very much. Okay, some interesting messages there. Thanks for your submissions. So we're now moving along to agenda item 7, which is the overview of the Clean Air Zone, our statutory Clean Air Zone, and we'll be discussing air quality, traffic and fleet compliance. And to introduce the report, go over to Laura Gosling. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So the purpose of this report is threefold, essentially. Firstly, to provide an update on where we are with progress with the Clean Air Zone in its second year of operation. Secondly, to note some changes to the Clean Air Zone Financial Assistance Scheme and to outline what Bristol City Council are doing to improve options for residents, visitors and businesses in Bristol. And thirdly, to undertake a consultation on some CAS charges. I think it's important to note at this point that before we proceed with undertaking a consultation, there will be some additional modelling that needs to be done to look at the potential impact of a CAS charge increase on air quality across the city. So I think that's important to point out essentially. So I'll just give a brief overview of where we are in terms of progress with the Clean Air Zone. So since it was introduced in November 2022, which was following a direction from government to a number of local authorities across the UK to introduce air zones where there was an issue with air pollution, we've seen some significant improvements in nitrogen dioxide levels in Bristol. So in this second year, we can report that since 2022, there's been a 20% reduction in NO2 in the CAS area itself, and outside of the CAS, that's been a 16.8% reduction. We also know that the number of compliant vehicles entering the CAS is improving as well. So there's been improvement in 2022, 23 and 24. However, what we do need to note is that we are still exceeding legal limits in some locations across the CAS area. Those 2 locations currently are Bond Street and Colston Avenue. So as directed by the government, we have been working with the Joint Air Quality Unit to look at what we can do at those sites to ensure that we are meeting our objectives for improving air quality. And we have undertaken some air quality modelling on a sort of business as usual scenario to look at Bond Street and Colston Avenue when we would be compliant in those 2 locations. And that initial modelling has shown that at Bond Street we would not be compliant until 2028, and at Colston Avenue we wouldn't be compliant until 2029 essentially. So we've been working with the Joint Air Quality Unit on looking at ways that we can help to improve air quality and essentially speed up that process to getting cleaner air within the Clean Air Zone essentially. And this moves on to the next point within the report, which is about the improvements that we are putting forward for the financial assistance scheme in Bristol. So you may all be aware that we currently offer a grant and loan scheme to Bristol residents that live and work in the CAS, and that's basically to help encourage them to encourage the uptake of compliant vehicles essentially. So what we are proposing to do in agreement with JACU is we're going to extend that scheme to all Bristol residents essentially now, so you don't have to live and work in the CAS to be eligible for that. And we're also extending the range in terms of, at the moment, you have to earn 30,000 or less to be eligible for that loan. We're going to increase that to 35,000 again. So we're increasing the scope and the number of people within Bristol that can access that loan. Again, this is all to encourage that higher level of compliance in the Clean Air Zone. We're also putting forward some enhanced offers to upgrade specialist vehicles. So this includes gritters and cranes, because we know that's one particular area where people are struggling to upgrade their vehicles. So we're going to improve the offer to them in terms of the funding for upgrading those vehicles. We're also enhancing the offer for public sector vehicles, which includes emergency services, Bristol City Council vehicles as well. So again, that encourages that fleet upgrade. And lastly, we're extending the mobility credit scheme, which is currently a scheme that we offer to residents in Bristol, which is money towards bike loans, cycle training, bus taster tickets, that sort of thing. So we're extending that until the end of 2077, essentially. So that offer is in place for longer to encourage more people to travel sustainably, essentially. So those are the measures that we're putting forward as part of that financial assistance scheme. The third part of this report is about proposing a consultation on the CAS charges. Currently that's set at £9 for cars. And we've undertaken some initial work and some modelling, which essentially has shown us that the higher the charge rate, the higher the level of compliance, essentially. So if you were to increase to £10 or £12 or £14, you get a higher level of compliance. What we still need to do at this stage is to now look at the exact impact that that would have on air quality. So what we're proposing as part of this report is that we'd like permission to progress with a consultation subject to that air quality modelling being taken place. That concludes an overview of the report, essentially.
Thanks very much. So just to sort of sum up, so we do have to have the scheme because of non-compliant air, and the government directed us, but they've directed us to reach legal compliance of nitrogen oxide as fast as possible. And that is why you've talked about how fast can we get there, because we have to reach it as fast as possible. And the government have already agreed some of these improvements to the support scheme and the measures and the assistance loans.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. So you would like to do more modelling and then consult. And as the report makes clear, this committee is concerned with air quality and environmental condition, and in conjunction with the Public Health Committee, we've agreed this needs to be sort of understood that it is a public health driver for this. However, a decision on the actual transport changes would be made later by the Transport and Connectivity Committee. So what we're being asked to do is to note the progress, or otherwise, as we've heard. It's not non-compliant at the moment. The support scheme that government would like us to enhance, and we've agreed with them, and then do some further modelling and then have a consultation, at which point, could you be clear, all the options or different views could be gathered to know what the response is to those?
Absolutely. That would be part of the consultation, and then we would take a view following those responses that we got.
Sure. So, and we have heard two quite, somewhat different responses from our public forum today. So, over to members of the committee now. Do you have, firstly, any questions and clarifications about the committee? So, I saw Councillor Kent first, and then we'll go backwards from there.
Okay, thanks, Jack. I mean, I have quite a few questions. So, how do you want me to do this? Shall I just do a few, and then I'll give way, and then if we
need to make sure everyone gets their say, and obviously it depends how long this takes.
So thanks.
Yeah.
So we can understand the context of this. We're obviously not the only CAS zone in the country. So are we the only one then who's failed to get through the first stage?
So we aren't the only clean air zone that's not currently compliant. There are at least another 5 that are still in that process. So it's kind of, you go through a sort of state 1 to state 4 process for the clean air zone. We do have a neighbouring authority, which is Bath. They are compliant, but they had a different type of clean air zone to us. So we're working really closely with JACU alongside about 5 other clean air zones that are going through the process at the moment.
Thanks. So what went wrong with our original modelling so badly that we've failed to hit our targets?
So when we did the modelling, that would have been in 2019, and obviously the original year of compliance was 2023. The clean air zone came in on the 28th of November 22, and it was quite severely delayed, which is why the original modelling would have been based on that. But because the clean air zone itself came in later, that's why I think that's one of the key points why we didn't achieve the compliance in 2023.
Thank you. You've said that we won't be compliant at those 2 points until 2028, 2029. Where's the actual evidence in the report to justify that? Because the legal advice is very clear that, you know, we need to have that evidence. I couldn't find it anywhere in the report.
Yeah, so we can provide that. It's still initial modelling at this stage because they're doing some extra sensitivity tests at the moment. And that's something that has been asked for from the Joint Air Quality Unit, essentially. So it's initial modelling results that we've got. And then essentially over the coming weeks, we will be able to finalise that once all those sensitivity tests have been done.
Okay, so I guess my question is, why has this report been brought when the modelling has not been done?
I think essentially because there's been a call for us because we reported on the clean air zone a year ago. So we do have to report on an annual basis on our progress with the clean air zone. And I think this is in response to essentially what those initial results are showing us, so that we can prepare and demonstrate to the government that we do have plans in place to tackle the problems. So the Joint Air Quality Unit are aware of the results that we have currently, and that's why we've been working with them to go through some measures to improve that air quality within Bristol.
Thanks. I'll give way at this point because I've got quite a few other questions, but they've had to go into other areas. Thank you very much for the answers.
We've established, we did want to be public about the progress or otherwise, and that's been agreed with the government. But the onus on us is to work with them to make that progress as fast as possible. So go on to Councillor Crawford. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have a slight confession as a prelude to this question is I do drive what I would call a bit of a banger. It leaks, it's not very efficient, it's not very good. When I tell people that my car is exempt from the CAD, people are genuinely very surprised. It's old enough to drink, it's everything. Don't worry, I'm the driver. So what my question is, and I think Christina's mentioned it in the public forum, is how are we setting what vehicles are compliant and not compliant? Is it us? Is it a decision that we can make?
So essentially that's set out by the Joint Air Quality Unit. So when the CASs were introduced by us and all of those different local authorities across the UK, they set out which vehicles are exempt and not exempt, essentially.
Okay.
Anything else to add to that, Helen?
Yeah, it was done on, we had to model an array of different clean air zone options. So as part of the modelling, when we agreed it back in, as I say, 2019, it was a CASD that we pulled in. And we did look at lots of options in the modelling, and this was what was deemed the going to get us to compliance as quick as possible. And that's the key phrase, to get compliance as quick as possible. So that has been set out in the, as Dolores said, in the kind of the national agreement.
Yeah, okay. And you're bringing up compliance as well quite a lot. And I think there's a slightly concerning element is compliance is 40 milligrams per unit, but it says in the report that the World Health Organization recommends a quarter of that. So it seems to me like we're seeking compliance of something that's 4 times above what is kind of considered acceptable to the World Health Organization. Is there not any way to kind of basically push actually to have that compliance and that air quality that we're aiming for to be at, well, what I'd argue to be kind of the acceptable limit?
Yeah, just so you're reaching sort of into the public health dimension of this. Is there a safe level, and why is compliance not at a safer level?
Yeah.
So would Alex like to comment there?
Contribute to that. So I'm Alex Minshall, Stable Sitting Climate Change Manager. And so part of the government was required to do this under a High Court judgment to achieve the legal standards that were set some years ago. And so the government has defined what it is compliance with the standards that it has set out in law. And it is up for the government to then say if they wish to lower that standard, and those numbers are being reviewed partly as a result of growing health evidence about what constitutes safe levels of nitrogen dioxide, but also to note that the World Health Organization has lowered its guideline level, which isn't necessarily a legal limit, and also the European Union has, in response to that evidence, has lowered its level as well. So there is a move internationally to lower the levels that are deemed legally acceptable or safe. And so we may see that emerge from government, and that's some area that we could seek to pursue, to press the government to do. But that's a sort of policy choice that we haven't yet made.
Yes, so if the government would let us know what the future limits would be, are they going to be stricter, are they going to follow that guidance, or go some way to that guidance, we could plan beyond the legal compliance of the CAS, which is about that current legal limit.
Okay.
May I also just provide a slightly wider answer, which is also in the process of developing a clean air strategy, which would seek to then go achieve cleaner air than that legal compliance and address other pollutants. So it's like CAS isn't the only tool that we've got.
Yeah. Okay. I've got some other questions, but I'm happy to cede the floor as well, so we get some other.
So let's go to Councillor Weston. He was waiting.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, my views on the CAS are fairly well known. I'm not a mad fan, and I certainly won't be backing increasing it. But today we are looking at simply starting a consultation. My question is, we're starting the consultation. Where do the results of that consultation go to? Is it back to us?
No, as we said, because it would lead to decisions about sort of transport and highway management, we would send those results there, subject to this modelling and any consultation.
Thank you, Chair. Then why are we discussing it? Because I would have thought a committee should own the whole project beginning to end. And instead, we're starting a consultation, but we're not going to get the results of the consultation. It's going to another committee that will then enact whatever happens and do the decision. This seems very convoluted. I would have thought it would have been much better to have a single committee own the entire project. This seems to be very strange.
Sure. And no, I can understand that. However, we have a number of portfolios here. The clean air policy is owned by this committee. It's about in the environment and its impact on us. We've also had discussions to ensure we're all in agreement with the chair of the Public Health Committee. And as I said, the debate about air quality started as a public health matter. It is also an environmental impact. But final decision about that specific change that might be made in future in the Clean Air Zone with how that is managed would then move to the Transport and Connectivity Committee. And we've been clearly in discussion with them as well, because they manage the highway in Bristol.
For the record, I think it's mad that we are starting a consultation and not owning the result of that. I think this should have sat with Transport and they own the whole thing, or it sat with us and we own the whole thing. But at the moment, I find it very strange that actually 3 committees' fingers are in the pie, but only 1 committee is going to make a decision. By all means, let's have a report and debate the report and note the report, but a decision should be with 1 committee. If that could be noted, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm perfectly comfortable. We are all in agreement on the various issues that need to be taken account of. We do own the progress with cleaner air and any future strategy that goes to more ambitious levels of cleaner air, but how the highway is managed is up to another committee. So, and I think the public will be quite clear, it is the council doing this, and we're part of the council, so it will move to that other
Martin,
committee.
can I ask how that decision was made? Because you're saying that we're all in agreement, that's the procedure.
All the chairs have been consulted, because we did want to know where to bring the report, and that report has come here, because the previous year's report was also sort of a matter for this portfolio.
Because I just also like to echo the same concern. That was raised.
That's fine. No, I understand it. But what we are doing is making sure it's been discussed and aired and debated in public by committee. Other members will be able to have their input into it through the consultation, and the decision is not being made here about what goes on in future in the Clean Air Zone. But if you've finished, I'll come to Councillor Dudd, who had a question or questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a few questions, but I'll just start off on the point Mark made. I'm kind of 100% in agreement with him. I think if we are agreeing to launch a consultation, then we should own that and follow the process all the way through. So I think the recommendation as it stands, we can't support. So at the very least, we'll be looking to amend it so that the consultation results come back to this committee to action, And if there are like TRO issues that need to feed out of that, then that's obviously something that happens subsequently. But I think if we're being asked to launch the consultation, then we need to be the people that decide on the actions at the end of it. So as it stands at the moment, the recommendation doesn't allow us to do that. So we'll either be voting against it or trying to amend it.
That's fine, but do make sure you have any wording if you want to propose an amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just a few questions really, and it's on the. Obviously, it's welcome to see that we have driven up the move from non-compliant vehicles to compliant vehicles. But is there a bit more detail around that in terms of what's happening? Because I think what's happening is maybe someone's getting rid of their 10-year-old diesel and buying a 15-year-old Euro 4 petrol, and obviously that's marginally better for NO2, but it's not really where we really want to go with it. So, do we have a bit more data around what people are actually doing when they change their vehicle to become compliant?
So there is in the report that accompanies this committee report, there is an overview of the types of vehicle change. So it's saying from 23, 24, moving from petrol to, say, hybrid or electric. So we've got that information. It's at quite a high level, essentially. But what you're seeing is a reduction in the diesel vehicles. You're seeing an uptake in those electric and hybrid vehicles and a slight increase in petrol vehicles. It's essentially what you would expect to see in terms of the results. But there is a table within that report that accompanies this committee report to show the progress with that.
Okay. And then I've got a question about commercial.
Sorry, could you just tell us what page that's on? Because I never saw it when I read the report. Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, the list of appendices is on page 20 of the committee papers.
Can I just ask about commercial vehicles as well? I don't know whether they're in scope in terms of increasing charges around commercial vehicles. But my suspicion a few years ago was that the charge to enter the zone was you could claim it back against your tax bill at the end of the year. So I just wondered if we've got evidence that actually what our commercial operators are doing is just paying the charge and then just claiming it back against as an expense, a taxable expense at the end of the year. So there's no real kind of no major incentive other than sort of normal fleet renewal processes that kind of incentivizes them to change the vehicle, because it's not really a commercial penalty.
So we don't hold that level of detail, because obviously we'd have to sort of find out from all the businesses, but it's something we could look into. But yeah, we don't have that information.
And just one final one. I'm a little bit concerned about what the money's being used for that comes through the scheme. So I very much welcome what Dave Redgewell was pointing about the bus services that the money could be used for example. But then we've just seen a decision by the Transport Committee, which is also another concern of mine, that they make the final decision, that they've agreed to spend £5 million on residents' parking schemes using this money for zones outside of the clean air zone. So I just wonder what impact that spending actually has on air quality within the zone, and is it the best use of money? So that's also my concern about the Transport Committee making the final decision. It seems like they spend the money on pet projects rather than on projects that actually have an impact on becoming compliant with clean air. So do we fully assess the investments we make using the money and how that has an impact on becoming compliant? Yeah, we probably have a little bit of data.
The scheme obviously is.
I don't think RPZ's outside of the zone.
As you know,
use of £5 million of this money.
As you know, the scheme is designed to pay its own way. It's not there to make money, but any surplus from the fees, and the more compliance there is, the smaller the surplus would be, because the ultimate aim of the scheme is not to collect fees, it's to be compliant. So as people don't pay fees, the budget shrinks, but the budget surplus is spent entirely on transport projects and aiming to reach modal shift and cleaner vehicles. And modal shift is part of the purpose of managing free commuter parking by having residence parking. But we also have a whole series of schemes. They are listed in the... Here we are. I'm trying to look at the details. Do you have a list of the expenditure, which is in the appendices? I'm trying to see those. Not sure where the expenditure of the zone is listed there.
And that's it for my questions now, so I'm happy to
Thank
move
you.
on.
While we're looking for those, does anyone who hasn't asked any questions have any further questions about the scheme? Okay.
Thanks very much. With the modelling, I was interested. Obviously, we heard a bit in public forum and from your report about sort of other sources of pollution, and I guess specifically from the compliant vehicles, but I imagine there's other things that feed into it as well. So whether those are taken into account in the modelling, and I'd be interested to know as well if the modelling is looking at all the different things that could be done to improve air quality, because it sounds like perhaps CAS can, the CAS scheme can go some other way, but maybe there are other ways that are more effective to reduce air pollution. So yeah, I'd be good to hear if the modelling is looking sort of more holistically at all the different things that could be done.
I'll start with the modelling question, and then I might hand over to my air quality colleagues to ask the other question. So in terms of the modelling, we are modelling a number of different scenarios in terms of air quality. So that includes a greater percentage of electrifying the bus fleet, and it also looks at a number of other sort of sensitivity tests, essentially. What we haven't done yet is we haven't put a whole range of different road schemes into it. So there are some of the upcoming road schemes that are modelled within it, but we haven't gone wider than that, essentially because, again, we've been guided by the Joint Air Quality Unit in the way that they require us to model it, and they do it over a certain period of time, so they're quite specific about what they'd like to see. So I think what you're referring to is a bigger piece of modelling that could be done, essentially. But to say for at this stage, there are a number of different scenarios that are being looked at, essentially. So a lot of that is around improving the fleet, essentially.
And I can answer the question in regards to the other sources of pollution in the modelling. So the model kind of sets up the road links in the city, kind of buildings, and looks at the fleet composition. So we get all the traffic data into there, and actually having the ANPR data helps us get a better understanding of the breakdown of the vehicles now. So we know the Euro classes of the different vehicles that are travelling into the clean air zone. So that helps with the model setup. It also then includes an element of background pollution, so that takes into account other sources, so buildings, the heating of buildings, any sort of other sort of regional sources. So it kind of incorporates that into the model, but separates out the contribution from the traffic and the vehicles that we want to kind of assess the effects of changing the compliance levels and how that would impact on compliance at particular locations. So hopefully that makes sense.
Okay, Councillor Renner, have you finished your question? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's helpful. So it sounds like hopefully we will get a bit of a picture of that from the modelling, but that equally, in terms of the CAS sort of framework, that does limit us, I guess, to a certain extent. My second question, I guess, was sort of just to get an understanding of the timeline of what happens next. So it sounds like there's going to be more modelling done. based on the results of that consultation is going to be drawn up, which committee is going to be overseeing sort of the detail of that consultation and what it looks like? I'm just interested in the oversight of this going forwards. Because it would be a shame to, if there are other, different ways that we could be tackling air pollution, to make sure that all of it is included in the consultation. So it would be reassuring to know what oversight there is of those next steps.
Can I just comment? So the objective of this piece of work around the clean air zone is to reach legal compliance, and legal compliance focuses on nitrogen oxide and the current government limit of 40 parts per million of that. So a wider piece of work is likely to come here to deal with cleaner air, and that would come in the new year, which will look at beyond clean air zone compliance, just to be clear. The current recommendation here is to authorise the Executive Director for Growth and Regeneration, in consultation with myself as Chair of this committee and the Chair of Transport and Connectivity, to approve public consultation. So once that modelling is done, we will both look at it and work out how to make sure we have the most effective consultation. And I certainly take your point. We want to allow people to comment on the options that are available, and I'm sure we will do that. Just to clarify, is there anything anyone would like to add to that? No, thank you. So hopefully that clarifies it. Yeah. So that is what we are actually going to be asked to consider when we've concluded this debate. Councillor Brenner, do you have questions about the report?
I've got a few as well. What I actually just wanted to start with was something that actually came up in the public forum, where it said that Bristol City Council is in the process of developing a clean air strategy and action plan. So could you just start with telling us a bit more about that and the timelines?
I'll hand over to my air quality colleagues on that one. He can tell you a bit more.
So we're at the start of that process. So we're sort of setting up the working groups and sort of public health working group to develop that work. So the timeline is looking to develop that over sort of the next 12 months or so. So developing a strategy which would include sort of discussing air pollution more widely than sort of the recent focus on transport, on nitrogen dioxide and compliance, widening it out to things like particulate pollution, so that we understand more widely the sources in Bristol that are impacting on health, and developing principles in the strategy to protect public health. So the strategy will set out, hopefully in a very plain English way that people can understand, why we need to go further than sort of the current legal compliance, because the health evidence has really grown over the last 10 years to show that everybody's impacted by air pollution, and we sort of need to go further than sort of the basic sort of current legal compliance that the UK have sort of working towards, reflecting the fact that within the EU they have shifted to lower targets for NO2 by 2030, so they've got a 20 microgram target for NO2 to be achieved by 2030. And then alongside that, developing an action plan which will identify areas and ways in which Bristol City Council can influence pollution within the city, reduce the emissions, but also reduce exposure to it. So with the air pollution, it's where pollution is emitted in relation to where people are and where people are exposed to it is really important. So I think getting a better understanding of that, people can reduce their exposure by travelling in a different way. So that over the next 12 months, we'll be developing that and having a more holistic conversation around air pollution.
Yeah, and this is in the forward plan for this committee, and all members of this committee are invited to the workshop that looks at our forward plan and what comes forward in future. So I hope that's clear. Thank you.
Great, so that will come here for.
It's in our forward plan as a committee. So you'll have a chance to look at that in the forward plan workshop that we always hold.
Thank you, that's helpful. I just then wanted to kind of touch on modelling, and I think this is particularly pertinent when we're talking about going out to consult on rising fees. I think what I'm trying to understand is what's underpinning a lot of the sort of what you want to do. And I just wanted to understand a bit more about bus electrification, because obviously we're seeing the fleet getting electrified. We've had a lot of new clean buses coming on. So what impact do you expect that to have on overall compliance?
So the initial modelling that we've done is essentially when we increase the percentage of the electric bus fleet, you do see an improvement in air quality. So that initial modelling that we've had done does show that it makes quite a difference essentially. So we still have to do those sensitivity tests before we can confirm the results, but it does look like that does make quite a difference. And obviously in the city centre there are so many services running through there that is essentially what you would expect.
Could you give us a sense of what that's in percentage terms?
So essentially when you model it, essentially you're looking at whether you're getting below that legal compliance level. So I mean we are talking percentage differences, but essentially it could get you quicker to that legal compliance essentially.
Okay, thank you. And then a similar question but for the fleet, because obviously we have a lot of fleet, and I appreciate stuff will have come on a fleet here, but bear with me as I'm new to the committee. Where are we with our own fleet, and what improvement will that also make to cleaner air as well, whether that's HRA or general fund?
So we've been working alongside our fleet colleagues to understand that. So we've obviously got the fleet sort of minus the HRA, and then we got the HRA fleet. So I believe there is some funding alongside for the HRA to upgrade their vehicles, and obviously there's a policy in place for the council to ensure that we upgrade to electric vehicles as well. One of the changes to the financial assistance scheme that we've made is to effectively put additional funding into public sector fleets. So we would be included as one of those, and we've been working closely with them to work out where we are with that. Also the other thing is making sure we've got the charging infrastructure in place so that we can ensure that the fleet vehicles can indeed charge up as well. So we've been doing that alongside our fleet manager to ensure that, and looking at the funding that we have, we could get our fleet, that's the non-HRA, just to be clear, up to the compliant levels within the next few years.
Yeah, at a previous committee, we committed to seeking funds for more charging infrastructure for council fleets at various depots. So that's already on the record. And we did note at that point that there hasn't been a strategy in place for cleaning up the council fleets, and we're preparing one right now on how we clean up and electrify the whole various council fleet components from different directorates. Obviously, it depends on depot charging as well as vehicles, and both of those need to be in place. So additional funding for vehicles is helpful, just as additional funding for depot upgrades to be able to charge those fleets is. And so that is underway, and yeah, we're putting that in place because we realised that was a bit of a gap.
Sure. Some stuff was in place, at least with the HRA. Money had been allocated a few years ago, I think. But no, that's helpful to understand that picture. How much funding's been allocated?
Sorry. At the moment, we said there's around 2.7 million allocated from the financial assistance scheme for public sector vehicles. So not just, that's any public sector that we're doing. We've done a lot of work, and we've done an EOI to all the public sector organisations so that we can understand exactly how many vehicles may be requiring additional funding, and then we will look to roll that out after, over the next year or two. Thank
you. So I've just got a couple more questions, and then I will make way. Thank you for the answers so far. I think one of the bits I'm just trying to get my head around is understanding that we've prioritised £5 million for residents' parking schemes, which actually has no tangible benefit really on cleaning air, based on the idea that we need to go as fast as possible, whereas actually the money that we could allocate perhaps to fleet upgrades and allocate perhaps quicker and prioritise that instead, could help us to get to clean air compliance.
Could I just correct you there? Modal shift does change air quality because people change with bus assistance combined with parking. More people are using the bus or other modes. So they all contribute to cleaner air through modal shift.
But not as quickly as upgrading a polluting fleet.
All right. Well, let's move on because we've got two more people with questions. Thank you.
I had one last question. So my last question was just about the clean air strategy. Is it not premature to be looking at raising the clean air zone fee when actually we're just now starting on the journey of writing a clean air strategy and action plan?
It's essentially we have to go through a process with the Joint Air Quality Unit where they look on an annual basis at where we are in terms of those legal compliance levels. So essentially we have points in time at which we have to say to them, these are the measures that we're putting in place to try and get to that legal compliance level. So essentially we can't hold off and wait. But what we can do is obviously come up with this kind of a strategy in terms of what we could do within the clean air zone remit, and kind of then the clean air strategy will look sort of more widely at cleaner transport, how we get a healthier urban environment, that sort of thing. So we are required, because of the process that we have to go through with the Joint Air Quality Unit to get to that legal compliance, to do something as soon as possible, essentially. So that's why we're doing it now. But obviously that will then, the work that Alex's team will be doing will then add to that and ensure that more widely we're improving air quality across the city.
Thanks. So conscious we need to focus on this report and what's in here. So we do have potentially more questions. I know Councillor Tate hasn't asked one yet, if you'd like to. And then we'll focus very much on how we get to sort of our judgment on this report. Go ahead.
It wouldn't be right if I didn't sit here as someone who's representing one of the most proud boards in Bristol to not mention that as we're sat here discussing an increase or a potential increase, which sounds like it's more of a, well, this is going to be a bit of a solution of then how we reach our targets, rather than thinking about the impact that can have on wards. The scheme currently, I'm glad to hear that you've spoken to the government around increasing the household income. One of the main things that I've had back on some of my casework, because there's lots of bailiff involvement regarding CAS, is that people just don't have the money to upgrade their vehicles within those wards, but also the schemes around claiming some of the money back. That doesn't happen, so you have to find the garage. You also then have to fill the paperwork out. You have to wait for that to be approved. It's quite a lengthy process. So my question is, sometimes people's vehicles might have broken down, so they're forced to buy a new one, which then means that's good because it's a newer car, and then when they look for a newer car, that they're also looking about being CAS compliant. So I suppose I've got a question around, is there any way where there can be a period of time where someone can possibly claim back once they've bought a vehicle, which I think, and it's not guaranteed, but like they can go through the paperwork, so that come back from people in the area. And just to say that after we adopted the Clean Air Zone, we then signed up to the Bristol's Just Transition Declaration, and as the Environment Board, and this is very much our sector, I just wanted to echo on what Councillor Kai said earlier around, is there a matrix and mapping, because actually there are people that want to use public transport in wards like mine, but the transport options just aren't adequate enough, and so actually the charges are just pushing people further and further into poverty, especially when we have cost of living crisis currently, and we're seeing, houses being really squished, and what tends to happen is people might be forced to give up work when work opportunities are quite rare in areas like that because of the cost of coming across a city. So it's just looking at it multi-layered, and I'm concerned that if we're doing the consultation and we're looking at all of these things and we have that lens, that just transition lens, that then when the decision then goes back to transport, is that being followed through, and then what matrix do they follow in deciding then the schemes? So sorry, it was quite a lengthy question.
I'll just start in terms of the consultation. So yes, some very fair points there that we need to consider as part of the consultation. And all I can say at this stage is obviously if we go ahead with the consultation, then we need to take those sorts of points into consideration. As you say, they're really key. So that will be done. We've done an equalities impact assessment alongside this committee report. So we're looking at those issues and how we can mitigate them. My colleague Helen might be able to say something a little bit more about the financial assistance scheme as well.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. With the financial assistance scheme, when we first set that up back in August 2022, I believe it launched, and we had thousands and thousands of people apply applying for it, which was great because absolutely that's exactly what we want them to do. So the time it took to get through was obviously there was a little bit of a delay. However, now it's very refined. People get through, and we have had that exact example you just talked about, where people are in the process of upgrading, their vehicle breaks down, MOT runs out, etc. So we do have a system in place. As long as they've applied and they're going through the process, we can indeed support them on that. What we do ask is that, as a sort of aside, what we don't want people doing is just going and buying a private vehicle. So obviously we do have to, or we get audited on all this, so we do have to make sure that they are adhering to it, and it is a vehicle that actually does, it is not non-compliant. We can do that, but yeah, we've absolutely spoken to lots of different types of people who've had that issue, and there's definitely a bit of wiggle room on that.
I suppose it's about getting that information out as well, because people aren't aware, like some people aren't aware of that, and especially if you've got additional needs, and unfortunately in areas of high deprivation you also do find that that can often be the case, or poor mental health, and so that's just something to flag. And also, I suppose, whilst we're looking at consultation, just some of the accessibility around CAS. So currently you can't look online and find out if you've gone into the zone. If you call up the helpline, they're not able to bring the fine back down to £9 if you call and you're like, I didn't know that I'd gone in, and you'd missed the date. Bailiffs are quite forceful within areas of high deprivation, so the use of bailiffs around CAS compliancy. So there's some access issues. Also, 6 days is quite short to come back, particularly if it's an income issue, or for many, what they've said to me is there's a particular day of the week that they might have gone into the CAS zone, and it might be that same day, and the following week they're like, oh no, I've gone into the CAS zone last week. But 6 days is a little bit too short, and some people said it'd be better if it was 7. And I know these are really little things, but this is stuff that people are feeding back to us in our wards. So whilst we're looking at the clean air zone, I think it's also important to maybe look at our networks within Bristol. We have Community Climate Action Project. They have the advocates there. If we're doing the consultation, I would urge it to go to that board where they're looking through the Just Transition lens, but also around Disability Forum. If we're reviewing it, let's actually review.
Thanks for the suggestion. We as councillors, we can all play a part in this, and through all our networks, and I very much hope we will. Like you, I'm disappointed by the scheme that was put in place by the previous administration, where you can't have an account, for instance, with your registration number. You have to know you've gone in and be aware of that. And I was very disappointed that scheme was designed in that way, rather than what they have in certain other places.
I think everything's a learning journey, and actually it's the same as a Just Transition. We're constantly learning and evolving. I think if something stays fixed, then it would be disappointing.
But negotiating a different scheme with the government would probably be quite difficult now, unfortunately.
Yeah, just to come in on that, that's actually a national scheme. So it's not Bristol that's made the decision not to have the account. It's like a national setup.
I suppose my question would be whether there's space to feed that back up.
Certainly, thank you. Now, I'm conscious we've had quite a long time for this debate so far. Can we focus in on how we're reaching the recommendations with any further questions, so that we do get to any decisions that we want to make? I know okay, Councillor Russell hasn't asked the question and then everyone else has up to this point, so we'll have to speed up. Thank you.
Hi, sorry, it's actually not directly in the report, but I think it's an important question anyway. I was wondering if the bus services like First Bus, Stagecoach have a time frame on the electrification, and I was wondering how much sort of responsibility they're taking for that, further than us sort of giving them the CAS fees towards that.
So First Bus do have a time frame, and up until I can't remember off the top of my head, but I believe there's going to be significant improvements in the bus fleet up to 2027, and that will take place across the different depot areas. I understand that we don't currently have information on what Stagecoach are doing with their bus fleet, but I'm sure that's something we can look into further. But certainly in terms of First Bus, we know where they are in terms of progress, in terms of electrifying that bus fleet, and they are on progress to ensure that a higher percentage is electric by 2027. obviously we've also got some biogas buses as well in Bristol at the moment as well. So that's good news because they're better as well in terms of the impact on the CAS.
Yeah, okay, thank you. It would be good to encourage Stagecoach to take action on that. I also had another question, I'll ask it really quickly. I was wondering how feasible it would be to look into potentially expanding the CAS. I know that won't be a popular decision, but if that might help reduce pollution. I was also looking at some of the sites that are outside the CAS that still are quite high pollution. So yeah, I didn't know the process for that. Thank you.
Okay, this I'm not saying we can do that as part of the evaluation of the current CAS, but a future scheme might be on a larger area. Am I right on that?
Yeah, so the current CAS has obviously been agreed with, obviously with Jacko, so we can't expand the current one. And the reason the clean air zone is in is obviously to get us legally compliant, as we've said already. Once we are legally compliant with the current CAS, then we do go into state 4, which would be the decommissioning. So if we wanted to do something as a council elsewhere, then that was within our gift to do, but that wouldn't be through the clean air zone.
Okay, thank you for that. In order to sort of move on, can I suggest we look at each recommendation one by one and see if we have any questions or points relating to each of those, and then we can see how the
Chair,
committee...
I did have a few more questions. So
I'm conscious of that, but...
We'll just have to vote against the report.
Sorry, what was that?
If you want to move on, that's fine. We'll just have to vote against the report. Thank you.
Could you say that again, please?
I said I did have some more questions, but if you want to move on, as you've suggested, I can just vote against the report. So
are you suggesting your questions could help you to understand the...
Well, I have a big question about the financial assistance.
All right, okay.
It's 1/3 of the triumvirate of how to deal with air quality measures, as
Yes.
you know. One is about financial assistance, one is about improving public transport and other alternatives to car use, and the third is the stick. We're presented here today predominantly to talk about the stick, but there are two other elements.
There are indeed. Okay.
We should have given a whole meeting to this because it's a very important decision.
We still have time in the meeting. I'm quite happy to ask about the assistance scheme. Please do.
Okay, thanks. Well, it sounds really positive that you want to move the vehicle replacement scheme from just people who live or work in the zone to anybody who's resident in the city earning under £35,000. Can I just check that wording? Earning under £35,000, is there a requirement that they're also working 18 hours a week?
Yeah, that requirement still stands.
Okay, so how many people does that exclude who don't work 18 hours a week but have a non-compliant vehicle in the city?
We don't know that figure off the top of our head. That's one of the things when we launch it we will look into. So we will be encouraging those people to come through. As we said, we've expanded it through the whole city, as you noted. And when we have that, we can look at that. If we do need to make any alterations to anything, we can go back to Jaku and have that discussion. Okay.
Just to check on this, because I'm trying to recall, I think about 4 years or so when the council was brought in my ward, about 20 to 25% of vehicles were non-compliant. So I don't have it, that's probably 1,000, 2,000, let's say, vehicles. This says this change will cost £500,000. I calculate that to be 250 vehicles this will assist in the whole of the city.
So just to be clear, the 0.5 million is what we're estimating. However, we do have the budget for further money. So if we have an overwhelming number of people that come for us, we can absolutely continue to fund more than 0.5.
So I want to check that because it says that it will use a first come, first served basis. It says that this will cost, the estimated cost of this change is £500,000. You're promising this committee that is not a cap and that you are opening up the 10 to 15 million pounds that's underspent, that was failed to be spent by the original financial assistance support programme. Because is that actually the real reason why the CAS has not worked as expected? because the financial assistance support programme has been a total failure.
So what I can say to that is that the financial assistance scheme has been open the entire time. We have seen a lot of uptake, certainly in the first 2 or 3 years. Obviously, as people have upgraded their vehicles, as time has gone on, vehicles have become more and more compliant. What we are doing now is looking to increase that and, as you say, expand that support so that more people can indeed dip into that pot and have that. As I say, the 0.5 is an estimate, but until we actually open up and see what comes through, it's first come, first serve, because obviously we have a money in the pot. Once that money is gone, that will be gone. But I can say that 0.5 is an estimate, and there is fun, and once that money is there, it is then spent.
Thanks. Okay, just to conclude this, you'll be pleased to hear that. If 5,000 people apply for non-compliant vehicles in this city, that would be £10 million. There is £10 million unspent, unallocated. What effect would that have on the modelling for going forward? Have you modelled that, or have you modelled 250 vehicles being taken out, as per this report?
We've based it on the current financial assistance scheme, and so the numbers that have come through are based on what we've had taken up. So we often have a large number of people apply, and they don't always follow through with the assistance for whatever reason. They may move, they may deem that they don't need that to upgrade their vehicle. So we've based those figures on the existing scheme. However, in
5,000 vehicle move, or 120,000 vehicle movements which are non-compliant removed, which is about a 9% reduction on the model on the amount of non-compliant vehicles. Is that actually not similar to increasing the charge by £14 to £14? 9-10% reduction.
And if that happened, then if you had 5,000 vehicles that came in that were upgraded, that's fine. But obviously, we've based it on the number of people who have uptake the existing scheme. So having that 5,000 vehicles actually upgrade, based on the existing scheme, is possibly not what we would expect to see.
Thank you. But of course, we have no statistics at all on any modelling here to look at. But thank you. Thank you for the answers.
Okay, thanks for that. Yes, go ahead.
Just come back on Councillor Kent's question about the clean air zone not working. I think it would be wrong to characterise it in that way, because I think the clean air zone has demonstrably improved air quality in the city. We've seen a 20% reduction in air pollution within the zone and a 17% reduction beyond the zone in the central areas of the city. So I think it has had a very positive effect on air quality in reducing pollution levels. It hasn't yet achieved compliance, and there are some points that need to be improved to help achieve that. But I think it would be incorrect to characterise it as not having worked.
Sorry, I agree. I actually think it's worked very well. I was talking about the financial support scheme, which has totally failed. I think actually the CAS has worked very well. We have 2 points of failure. What we don't have here is any details on why those 2 points specifically have failed to reduce down pollution. It would have been interesting to have known that, because it's only 2 points that are triggering this debate, and has meant that we've not moved forward in the process. We have no information at all. So we do have the information per year, and we can see that those points, unlike most other points, have not actually reduced down. And so to know why that they have not become compliant, is it a shift in traffic, which could have been, of course, caused by our own change to the road system? Is there some other reason why those points aren't compliant? And the point is, we're being asked to basically pull out a massive stick on the people of this city, but without, as far as I can see, a shred of evidence to back up why we should do that. And I think the legal advice we've been given is very, very clear. Anyway, so I'm going into the debate. I'll be quiet now, but thanks, Alex, for clarifying, because actually I think the CAS has worked well, and I support the CAS.
Yeah, thank you for that. Bear in mind that there's there are proposals to improve the support scheme, proposals to support vehicle fleet shift, and there's proposal to undertake further modelling and then consider a consultation. That is not a stick, that's a consultation. So just be clear, we aren't being asked to approve something that we haven't yet consulted on. Just, I think it's important to know that, and it is important to recognise that all improvements in air quality do improve health outcomes in the city, because as has been made clear by the Director of Public Health and others, there is no safe minimum level of pollutants. The increase in evidence is that all pollutants cause some health impacts. So improvement in those pollutants is an improvement in public health. Okay, so do we have particular questions that will help us to move on in this? I know Councillor Dudd and Councillor Ross. Go ahead. Councillor Finch, yeah. Yeah.
Councillor Finch. Oh, I'm happy.
Carry on. I did see your hand first.
Yeah, just on recommendation 2, so around the capital vehicle replacement budget. So is that something that was agreed in the budget? And I'm just interested in the policy around that. And my main question is any of that money being used to buy diesel vehicles? Because for a number of years I've been against us using capital funding to buy diesel vehicles that will be around for 10, 15 years or so. So if that recommendation means that we are going to procure diesel vehicles, then I can't vote for that recommendation.
Thank you. I think we can get a clarification on that.
Thanks, Councillor. That's existing money that is earmarked for EV, so that isn't for money for combustible. That is money that is currently in the capital replacement budget for EV. Yeah. So it's to use it as a match for the money that we hopefully secure via JACU for the fleet replacement for the general fund, which we've got 46 vehicles that we would like to use this money for EV.
Thanks for that clarification. Councillor Finch.
Oops. Thanks very much. Yeah, it's sort of picking up on Kirsty's point and Tim's point as well. Yeah, I'm interested in that Clean Air Fund support and sort of the practicalities of how it works in terms of, for example, if people do receive a fine for going through the clean air zone, in the issuing of that fine, is that information included? How does that pathway look for those vehicles that aren't compliant? Are they getting that information? Are they being encouraged? I'd be really keen that's looked at, because if there are if the reason that we're stuck, because it doesn't seem to be moving that much, this percentage of non-compliant vehicles that we have left. If it may be that the reason that we're stuck, as the report suggests, is that it's no longer as much of a deterrent because of inflation, but it also may be that there's other sticking points in the pathway. So yeah, I'm interested that we do look at that. And then I guess sort of following on from that as well, a second question I have is, of those non-compliant vehicles, I'm interested in what proportion were aware, and sort of paid in advance, and what proportion received the fine afterwards, because I guess it can only act as a deterrent insofar as the vehicles are aware when they're entering it. So yeah, I'm also interested in that, and hopefully I'm hoping those things will be considered as part of this and as part of the modelling. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, if I pick up on that, excuse me, if I pick up on that first point, so yeah, when somebody does come into the zone and they are paying the charge, or indeed they're having to pay the PCN, we do allow that. We do raise quite a lot of awareness of the financial support alongside all the mobility credits as well. So that's all wrapped up in that. Second point, I don't know. Yeah, I think yeah.
I think we'll have to go back and see what we've got. We'll have to speak to our parking services team who manage the system, just to see what we can find out on that. I'm not immediately sure.
Yeah, that would be really interesting because obviously the whole premise, I guess, of increasing the fines relies on it being a deterrent, and if actually the reason that there's this sort of residual 4 or 5% is more because of people not being aware, or other factors, then yeah, I think that does need to be looked at. So that would be really interesting. Thank you.
Yes, and as said earlier, we can all play our part in ensuring everyone is aware of the support scheme, and hopefully this debate will be part of that awareness raising. Okay. I think Councillor Renard, you had...
Thank you. Yeah, these are governance ones relating to recommendation 2. So just so I'm clear, the financial assistance scheme sentence, actually this has already been approved, and I can see on the website the changes to the financial assistance scheme have already been made, right? It's not actually been asked to improve anything to do with that for noting in effect. Fine. And then in terms of the budget for the capital vehicle replacement, probably to Pete, just to understand, that's already been budgeted for and the decision's already been taken on that budget allocation?
Yeah, there's an existing budget currently, and there's a remaining amount that we can use for the match against the money that we secure from JACU. So it's already budgeted for within our fleet replacement scheme.
Okay, fine. So just linked to that then. So what is it we actually need to approve today in relation to the procurement of it?
Yeah, exactly. It's over the value, yeah.
And I'm sure there's a reason for this, but I look at fleet and I think transport. So why are we approving it and not transport? That may be to do with delegations, but...
Yes. As said, it's been discussed across all the committees. It is all under the same executive director, and we would have had 2 separate debates about what's basically the same thing, related thing, if it had not all been in one report at this committee.
Because I'm just trying to understand why we're approving something that's transport related, but then are not going to see the clean air zone stuff come back here for approval as well.
It's the result of the scheme which we're evaluating today.
Okay.
Did you want to add something there?
I could perhaps add a bit about it being related to the environment. So the fleet replacement of the council's fleet is an issue that is managed by this committee as part of the wider environmental performance. Its objective here is to help to achieve compliance with the clean air zone, which is why it's been brought in this paper. But it could have been brought as a separate item to this committee.
We have previously discussed, and will, I'm sure, again discuss decarbonising and improving our fleet for cleaner air.
It's point of order. So it's fleet issues. I thought that was strategy and resources. Because any procurement issue around fleet used to go via Craig Cheney in the old days. So just
decarbonisation of the fleet, which is why we had the report at the last meeting about putting in place additional charging to help decarbonise our fleet. But we're all one city council, and I don't have a problem with that. Thank you. Are we ready to move on to consider those recommendations then, and take them one at a time? So I move the first recommendation, which is to note the information contained within the latest CAS evaluation report, which is Appendix A, and to note the updates of the financial assistance scheme as set out in the report, to approve changes for the Clean Air Fund, which was delegated in Cabinet Papers in December 21, and the references there. Do I have a seconder that we...
Well, Chair, that's just for noting, so there's no need for a seconder. So.
Okay, so are we happy with noting that? We can move on to the second item. Sorry, what was that? No vote because it has the word note in it. Yeah, sorry, which I should have recognised.
So just for clarity, Chair, is repeating noting recommendation 1?
Yeah. Oh, do we note that? We've had a debate. Are we happy to note that? Thank you. Okay, I'll take that support from the indications. So the second recommendation is to authorise the Executive Director for Growth and Regeneration, in consultation with the Chair of the Environment and Sustainability Committee, myself, to approve the procurement and associated expenditure from the Capital Vehicle Replacement Budget to cover the match funding required, and this funding will support the upgrade of non-compliant CAS fleet vehicles in line with the revised financial assistance scheme that was approved by the Joint Air Quality Unit. So that we have to agree. Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Well, Councillor Crawford spoke, whereas Councillor Finch raised a hand. So we'll take that. Can we have a vote to those in favour of that recommendation, recommendation 2? Thank you very much. That is unanimous, so that has been approved. So we're going to move on to the third recommendation, which is to authorise the Executive Director for Growth and Regeneration, in consultation with the Chair of the Environment and Sustainability Committee and the Chair of the Transport and Connectivity Committee, to approve public consultation on a potential increase in the CAS charges, subject to the outcome of the modelling. Any changes to the legal order and implementation of a revised charge will be delegated to the Transport and Connectivity Committee. Do we have a seconder for that recommendation?
Oh, well, everyone's looking at me, so I'll second that again.
Thank you very much. Councillor Crawford seconded that. So could we have votes on that recommendation? Now, those in favour? So we have 4. Any votes against? We have 5. Interesting to note that as of Tuesday's council meeting, the political balance of the council has changed, but this committee is yet to be have that balance changed. Councillor Finch.
It does sound like there is more modelling needed. So I guess I'm voting for this because I'm confident that the modelling is going to happen and then it's going to be in consultation with yourself and Ed Plowden. So I see this as sort of a deferral of that responsibility to look at what goes into that consultation. But, you know, it is clear that there's more modelling needed and maybe there's, you know, but it's not clear from today exactly what might go into that consultation. Could we potentially amend this to give the other members of the committee more...
The decision's been taken. I think we have a situation where recommendation 1 has been noted, recommendation 2 is approved, recommendation 3 has been voted against, so it's the end of the item.
Oh, okay, I didn't realise that. Okay.
So if we wanted to amend it, it would have...
You're too late.
We would have had to amend it first. But this wording hasn't been supported.
Yeah, recommendation 3 has been refused by the committee.
Yeah, but in that wording.
Yeah,
if there was a change to that wording.
It's too late.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
But we voted against consulting on raising the clean air zone charge. So obviously you'll need to reflect that in your budget proposals where you've already baked in an increase.
Or we could bring back a different report with a different recommendation. Okay, thank you for that. So we can...
Chair, just keep in mind the 6-month rule, that's all.
Yeah, thank you. So we can move on to the next item then, which is agenda item 8, weed management policy. Do we have a slight pause for changeover? Shall we take a minute or two to allow the officers to reshuffle? Can we have a very short break in that case? At most 5 minutes, preferably less. Member is still not back yet, but should have read the report. So we're going to start item 8, which is the new weed management policy proposal. So we've got a report advising us that we have made progress in reducing pesticide use in operations of managing weeds and invasive species in the city. To consolidate our understanding of that and our direction for that, we're proposing a new weed management policy. None currently exists. And we're seeking approval for further actions to help the council reduce our use of pesticides further, specifically the herbicides used for weed management. And it is going to be a key decision. There will be a vote at the end of it. To present the report on weed management policy, I'm going to go to Alex Minchell. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Frodell. So this paper, as Councillor Frodell said, is to inform you about the progress that has been made, how and kind of why the council uses herbicides to control, or why we control weeds in the first place, or problem plants, as you might describe them in different ways, and why we use herbicides to do that. And then to update the committee on the progress that's been made over the recent years since we set a target to halve the amount of herbicide that we use by 2030, so over the current decade, and we're about halfway through that, and we've made a reduction of 42%. So we've made very good progress in terms of achieving that 50% reduction in herbicide use. And what you see in the paper then is also we've looked at what is happening in other local authorities, because the use of glyphosate, and the main herbicide that we use, is a concern more across the country and more broadly. And so we've seen different local authorities trying different approaches to manage their weeds and problem plants in different ways. And so we've conducted a review of what other authorities are doing and the sort of costs and benefits of those various approaches. And that's set out in one of the appendices. And the main thing then for you, the committee, to do today is to approve the new policy that sets out how we will control weeds, problem plants, in different settings, because the council obviously is a big landowner that has lots of different types of land where it needs to manage those weeds, and that's set out in the appendix. So I'll just ask Kit to explain a bit more about, my colleague Kit Beaumont, to explain a bit more about that policy.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, I guess just first just to say why we're kind of using the term problem plants. I think weeds is a very subjective term. You know, is it a wildflower? Is it a weed? You know, some people want to keep them, some people don't. So it's, you know, we're trying to focus on plants that cause a problem, you know, which is why we're using that terminology. So, yeah, as Alex said, we've kind of written a new weed management policy, which aims to clarify what the council's position is, you know. So we've been obviously doing this for years, but this is the first time we're kind of putting it into paper, what the council's approach is to managing these plants. So the aims of the policy is to help the council move towards the reduction of pesticide by 50% as set out in the Ecological Emergency Action Plan, and to deliver on the corporate strategy. And its aim is to adopt a kind of what's called an integrated pest management approach to essentially try to reduce our dependency on chemical pesticides. So it goes through and sets out our kind of legal and regulatory requirements, you know, what our responsibility is in terms of managing using these products, and our responsibilities for managing the public highway and public assets. And I guess the thing, you know, and sets out who the roles and responsibilities are. You know, what you'll see is that this is it's a policy that covers a wide number of kind of directorates within the council, wide number of teams who are kind of involved in this. So it's really been a kind of cross-council piece of work getting to where we are. So I'll come on to the policy itself, and it sets out a kind of stepped approach for how we should be choosing to manage problem plants. Step 1 is around prevention. So, you know, this is designing out the need or designing infrastructure in a way that will minimise weed growth to start with. sweeping to remove weeds or the build-up of residue that will allow weeds to grow, using things like mulches, and then hygiene measures, making sure that the machinery and equipment are clear so we're not transporting plants between sites. We then want to introduce effective monitoring thresholds, which will include kind of inspection, pest identification, forecasting, to ensure that pesticides are only used when truly necessary and that the correct control is applied at the right time. We then want to, where possible, prioritise non-chemical intervention. So this is kind of similar to that preventative measure, but this is when when plants have actually kind of taken hold. We want to use things like hand weeding, mechanical weeding, so that's trimming, mowing, brushing, etc. Use of physical barriers, and then explore opportunities for other biological controls that aren't glyphosate and potentially have a lower impact. And then continue to explore the opportunities for new technology or new application techniques that will allow us to manage weeds in a different way. And finally, we want to create more opportunities for community involvement in maintaining herbicide-free areas through an opt-out scheme. And then the last step is around kind of targeted chemical use. So, we anticipate there's going to be an ongoing need to use glyphosate to manage plants in the city, but the idea is to do this applying the minimum effective dose in the lowest frequency needed to kind of manage that problem. And then where possible, look at how we can use more targeted application through things like spot treatments or weed wipers that will kind of target individual plants as opposed to kind of wide cover spraying. The policy then goes on to set out kind of what our current approach is. So this is what we currently do. I think just want to make it clear that the policy isn't changing the way in which we currently manage weed. It's kind of clarifying its current position. And it goes through the kind of the regular use areas and sets out kind of what our approach currently is to managing those plants. Where we're applying glyphosate, that's typically done on a twice-a-year basis. It does go on to say that, in exceptional circumstances where the principal control method can't be implemented, then glyphosate may be used in order to kind of manage that asset effectively. Policy goes on to talk about how we will capture data to improve the way we work and continually review our processes to ensure that we are using glyphosate in the most effective way possible, or managing weeds in the most effective way possible, I should say, and ensure that we are meeting our kind of legal obligations through compliance of things like code of practice and COSH, etc. We don't envisage, and we'll ensure that in delivering this policy, we're kind of ensuring that our practices don't impact unduly anyone within the city, taking that kind of equality and inclusion perspective, and there's an EQIA attached which you can look at. So we will, as part of our reporting on the Ecological Emergency Action Plan, we'll be producing kind of annual reports that will show kind of progress made, and we'll hopefully publish some of these figures online, which would help to inform councillors and the public about what we're doing. As Alex said, we've kind of reviewed what other councils are doing. There's a wide range of approaches taken, and I'm sure people are aware of cases such as Brighton where they've banned the use of glyphosate, and they've had to kind of row back on that because they've been unable to kind of keep on top of it through manual approaches. And we don't want to end up in a similar situation, so this is trying to encourage us to take a step-by-step approach to get what we want to do, but recognising the kind of current limitations that we have. And then attached to this, so the policy sets out what we currently do. There is then an action plan, and these actions will be included in the Ecological Emergency Action Plan eventually. And this shows how we're going to start to trial some of those new approaches where there are opportunities to do that. And you can see those in Appendix A3.
Thanks very much. Thanks for both of you. And so you've referred to the Ecological Emergency Action Plan, and we are going to have a revised version of that and a report on that coming to committee very shortly. And the progress made in cutting glyphosate use is documented in that. It's 42 to 43% already down towards the 50% target. and that target is for the reduction between 2020 and 2030. So we're well on the way, but there's more to do. And I hope this shift to opting out, manual weeding, and use of support like community payback allows more manual weeding in more parts of the city. So do we have any questions about the proposal for the policy? Councillor Raynaud, thank you.
Just curious if you had any data on, say, the first 6 months of this year in terms of use of pesticides. Sort of, are we still on a sort of a reduction trajectory this year as well? Which is kind of what I was trying to understand.
Yeah, thank you. We collect our figures annually, so we'll be reporting on this year's use in March time.
Fine.
But yes, generally, as you can see from the data, it's kind of been decreasing each year.
Yeah, I'll won't get too political, but it's obviously good to see how much happened under the Labour administration around those reductions. What I just wanted to understand with this weed, so obviously this is the first time we've had a weed management policy, but obviously the practice of what you've been doing has been in place for several years. So what in this weed management policy is different and new versus what you've been gradually doing over the last few years in line with the Ecological Emergency Action Plan?
Yeah, thanks. I guess it primarily clarifies what our current position is, but it's putting first, I guess the decision-making framework of how we kind of deal with those plants. It's kind of is a new way of setting out how we will manage those weeds, as opposed to kind of going, we've always sprayed here, we've always brushed here. It's trying to kind of step back from that. This is our usual practice, to going, okay, what's the right approach to managing these weeds in this area? So it's the right approach for the right situation, and that is a new approach.
Yeah, and I think it's probably also fair to say that implementation is variable, and therefore what this policy now does is gives a very clear implementation line, which both council staff, our contractors, and members of the public can understand what that line is. And so I think that will raise the standards overall as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think the important thing is there is much more clarity, much more coherence coming, and it is a much more joined up approach. And in addition, we've actually formalised the opt-out scheme, which was in some disarray before because it wasn't documented, it wasn't clear, it wasn't readily available. And we're actively pursuing the community payback support in order to ensure there's more capacity for manual weeding without stretching the budget, which is limited at the moment. Thanks. Councillor Kent, then Councillor. I'm going to work my way up the line again.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report. I think that's very useful. Now, I think we all have the odd street or path which has become a traffic zone. So I guess as a local ward councillor, how will I know what treatment level we're doing down which street? Will there be sort of a map produced which sort of says, hey, these streets we're going to treat, these streets not? And if we have a particular problem area, who do we take that to try to get that resolved? Thank you.
So I suppose when it comes to, sorry, Ken, over here, I'm responsible for the cleansing and the weed spraying on the highway. So if you've got a problem street and it's highway, then the responsibility becomes my service. So you would contact officers within the team on the street scene side, such as Kurt James, and they would implement it. Regarding a creation of a map so that there's some transparency of where's opted out and where hasn't, that is underway with GIS teams as we get the data and we've sanitised the data going forward. Spraying is generally once or maybe twice a year, depending on the sort of season it's been. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the answer is the street scene team for highways. Councillor Crawford, and then we'll...
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks for this policy. I know that it's quite a tricky area because in some parts of the city you'll get people who are really, really dead against glyphosate, and obviously in other parts of the area some people are really they're very unhappy with the amount of weeds. So I appreciate it's very much not a one-size-fits-all strategy. For me, I've just got two questions. So the first question was, I can understand that we want to be removing weeds from the gullies. Where the highway and the pavement actually butts up against kind of housing, like in my ward, it's primarily walls. Is there actually a reason why we are removing those weeds? Because in my view, kind of the maintenance of that wall is the responsibility of the homeowner, even if it is kind of a party wall between the highway and their property. Is that not the same with that kind of weed growth as well?
So it's the curtilage of the property, the wall is their boundary, the highway starts from where the pavement enters in. So it's a bit of a grey area, but basically if you've got a lot of cigarette detritus along that area, you wouldn't expect the resident to scoop it all up. It would be on the cleansing service. So that is the area that we spray. It's what you call that is the back edge. Yeah. So we spray up to the back edge, which is the wall or the boundary with the property.
Okay. I'm just because I'm also thinking ahead is that some residents will have kind of potentially actively scattered seeds in that space themselves. And I am aware that I've got some feedback where people are unhappy that it's been sprayed against the wall because they've, say, planted some Mexican fleabane or something like that, which has spread. And it's kind of part of their street scene, even if it is kind of in contravention to the weed management policy. But that's really helpful. Thanks, Ken. The other question I had, it relates to invasive plants. So I had a bit of an issue with this. I think I reported some, I can't quite remember the trefoil garlic that was present in one of the parks, and the response in the inquiry was, this was a couple of years ago, but it was basically, there's not really a policy to deal with that. So I'm glad that is included. My question is actually, will there be an enforcement action taken where the invasive plants are found to have kind of spread from private property? Because my understanding is that it's a measure in the Act.
I mean, it depends on the classification of invasive plant, because anything like Japanese knotweed and what have you, the EA take responsibility and enforcement
on. Caroline Enya and I work for Parks Department. So it's very difficult sometimes to understand where it's spread from, but yes, we'd certainly look at some enforcement if we could prove that had spread from that particular property.
Okay, great. Thanks very much.
Thanks for that. Thank you, Caroline. Councillor Weston.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just suddenly realising how very, very different Councillor Crawford's ward and mine really is. I could show you my area as well if you would like. Mine's very much in one of those areas that just complain about weeds, which is why I locked eyes with Caroline there, because she often gets those complaints. First of all, I actually don't have a problem per se with the policy. I'm happy with the level of glyphosate use. Sometimes, I remember when we debated this thing with Fabian Breckles a few years ago when he was on it, and he and I were both making the plea that actually when you're dealing with these really problematic weeds, it's the only game in town, sadly. I mean, it should be reduced as much as possible, but you still need the weapon in the arsenal. My problem, my concerns, I guess my questions are the implementation of the policy. And this is sort of going at both directions on you. We do have weeds in my patch that are about 4 foot tall, often from the back edge, because Henbury Brentry is awkward in many ways, not just in its political representatives, where we have pavement abutting road, and then it'll verge away and there's a huge verge, and then it'll almost have a forest in it, then it'll go back to the pavement. So when the sprayers come down the road, with all the parked cars, they don't get to the pavement, they can't get along the edge of it, and so often it doesn't look like it's being sprayed at all, even though that's just because we're awkward. So when it comes to the spraying, in areas sort of where you've got that, will it be backpack spraying? Because that's the only effective way you're going to get to it. Because the level of parked cars means you can't run a little road sweeper style sprayer. It's not going to work. Question 1 on that. Question 2, when it comes to gullies and the removal of growth, you say in the table it'll happen throughout the year. I would be content if it happened throughout the decade, but it doesn't seem to happen once in a blue moon. I've got gullies that I keep reporting that are matted with grass. Yeah, they're still there. So when does someone clear out the vegetation from the gullies?
So question one, the backpack approach is adopted. It should be adopted. We have quad bikes from the highway, spraying from the highway, and then we have backpacks for walking around and spraying. We also have like a strimmer with a brush on the end, which is a weed ripper that we use as well. So that combination can and does get used. If you have anything like that and you're unhappy, report it to the streets via Fix My Street, and we can deploy Bristol Waste to get on top of that.
Okay. I'll report them again then, but they're still there. I think I had a second. Oh yeah, okay, you probably go on. Yep.
Hi, good morning. Nick Pates. I work in the highways team. With regards to the gullies, we've got a new gully contractor that we procured and appointed in, or a new contract, I should say. It's the incumbent won the contract, but we've got a revised contract that's got enhanced KPIs. So we're hoping, and we're working with them at the moment to deal with these issue gullies. We've got about 874 non-running gullies. We've got a backlog of around 150 that we know are blocked and that we can't open. So we need to do civil works on those, as well as a lot within Fix My Street and others, which have been reported as blocked. We do a cyclical cleanse on about 8,000 of our gullies, and we're looking to increase that cyclical cleanse. We've got 44,000 gullies, so a significant portion of that is a cyclical cleanse. And we'd also inspect them annually. So we're trying to sort of build up our data at the moment. We do hope it will improve quite significantly. We do know it's a big issue at the moment, block gullies.
Okay, that's promising, so I will follow that up privately if that's all right. Final question, if I may, is how do we link up the spraying of weeds with road and pavement works? They recently did the slurry seal on the pavements, which was lovely, except we literally sealed the weeds under it, and now the weeds are already growing through it. It would have been nice had the sprayers gone out a couple of weeks before, killed the weeds, and then we laid on clean pavement. How do we join up our dealing with the problem plants with the works on highways?
Back to me as well. Yeah, well, sort of combined, but currently our slurry seal program undertaken by a contractor, we've got two methods that they should go in and undertake. So there's predominantly they do a mechanical, so a hand pick or a sweep. I would say
didn't.
Yeah, sometimes that hasn't been done to a satisfactory standard.
At all?
Okay. Perhaps maybe I could catch up with you afterwards and understand the streets, and we'll look at those. We do have a new contractor again because we re-tendered our entire highway framework. And whilst we're quite happy with the overall performance of the last contractor, again, we've got new KPIs and performance measurements within this one. Our contractors and our officers who do the slurry seal do work with Bristol Waste as well, because sometimes Bristol Waste undertake that on their behalf in advance. But at the moment, because of our sort of want to reduce spraying, we don't spray before we slurry. Yeah.
Okay, Chair, that's my final question, but I would urge them to spray before you slurry seal, because you're just breaking apart the slurry seal with almost immediate effect. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and thanks for clarification. I think there'll be, being regarded as good news, that we have a new contract for maintaining gullies in the city, which is always a feature of casework that we have. And certainly, yeah, sort of weed reduction, weed control should be done before the slurry sealing. Were there any other questions relating to this? Councillor Finch, yeah.
Thanks very much, and yeah, thank you for the report. And yeah, really welcome, especially sort of the priority of the preventative methods and non-chemical intervention, coming before, and then glyphosate as a last resort. Yeah, I guess I was interested in that there's still a lot of spraying in that problem plant management approach. Is there a reason why painting or injection can't be used more widely where we are using glyphosate?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to it's a balance between cost and effectiveness. of the approaches. You know, anything beyond spraying is obviously more resource intensive, which comes at a cost. And we've kind of got an existing contract. I'm not sure when the current contract of Bristol Waste is up for renewal.
So let's not go there. Regarding spraying, to spray the city, it's about £150,000. To manually de-weed the city, based on the approach that Baines has taken, which is costing them about £300,000 a year, it would cost us, because we're that much bigger, about nearly £1 million to if we employed a team to manually dig out weeds across the city. So what we're looking to do is have an adoption scheme whereby residents can choose to manage their the weeds on their street, and they take the responsibility for that. We're looking to utilise the probation service to dig out in across the city, and then we're looking to maybe do other activities to sort of reduce that sort of financial burden to move to a manual approach.
Great. So, and I guess with the painting, that's also just more resource intensive than the spray. Okay, so that makes it's the same, that same calculation, similar to with manual weeding. Painting is that just that bit more resource intensive. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Yeah, and I really welcome those sort of more outside the box ideas of using the probation service and working with sort of local communities and volunteer groups for you know, doing some of the weeding themselves. So that sounds really positive. My other question was just in terms of, you know, I'd be really interested to see how this progresses and how, you know, what solutions we come up with across the city and how those work out. So yeah, what sort of reports will we get going forward so that we can sort of see how it's all working?
So we're going to report on the progress annually. Exactly how that report is then communicated can be decided.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I'd really welcome the inclusion of those sorts of case studies in that report and what has worked well and what hasn't worked well as the sort of broad brush figures. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. We look forward to that. It'll be in the annual report of the Ecological Emergency Action Plan where these details are proposed to be included. And I know there's been some really positive feedback about the other benefits, the community building benefits of a street choosing to opt out and undertaking those activities as a group in their own road, and that's been, you know, really, we've had some really positive sort of feedback on that. So I hope it will spread, but it's complemented by use of these other resources with the probation service that I've been really keen that we secure to help us with this. To me, it's a really positive step to consolidate this in one policy, to show the framework and to make it much more joined up across the council and consistent, as we've heard, so that it's clearer sort of what can be done and how and where. Can we move on to the recommendations, if there's no other comments? So we've got 3 points for the committee. To note the progress made by the council in use of pesticides, to approve the adoption of the weed management policy, which we have here, and to approve the proposed actions for inclusion in the Ecological Emergency Action Plan, the 2025 to 28 version that is coming forward to our committee shortly. So I'm going to move those recommendations. Can we have a second of that?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Councillor Tate. Can we vote on that? Those in favour of those recommendations? That's unanimous. Thank you very much for your support. I'm really glad we have that in place. So we're moving on to the final item on the agenda, which is the Period 5 Financial Forecast Report. We've got Pete Anderson to just briefly introduce that. Thank you.
So this report is to note for information, further to information that was presented to a previous S&R committee. So you'll be familiar with the report in relation to the revenue and capital spend linked to this committee. So the report relates to outturn position at the end of August. So it is looking backwards rather than looking forwards. We call that period P5. Period 5, we're just entering in terms of a P7 position. So there is a lag of of 8 weeks, which we have discussed and noted at committee. There's good news in the revenue position when it was at P5 in relation to improvements in the energy budget by nearly 300,000, which was positive. We still have a heat imbalance challenge at 100 Temple Street, which we're working with at the moment in relation to plant and an engineering solution to address the heat imbalance, which has caused increased costs in terms of energy. But we've also experienced there's been no costs in relation to budget and energy, unit costings, etc., which has meant the position is not on budget going into this year. The paper highlights a number of risks and opportunities as per previous reports, just in terms of what they are and what the mitigations are. And then there is a section on capital. The two capital strands of budget here relate to the decarbonisation programme and the renewable scheme linked to Fleet and Warms, Homes and Hugs 2, which people will be familiar with. There is significant underspend stated here in relation to the decarbonisation programme, and this budget has been reprofiled. This relates to the council and ourselves working closely with Amoresco in relation to decarbonisation plans under the public sector decarbonisation schemes 3 and 4, where we are looking to decarbonise 12 of our corporate buildings, schools, libraries, respite care. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to progress as quickly as we would like jointly, which has meant that we're into a stage 1 approval for the delivery of those 12 projects, but we're seeking to our stage 2 approval, which is an internal process in January. So we will be in delivery in 26-27. So the decarbonisation budget, just for clarity, is circa 15 million. And there is a plethora of activity linked to that. I think it's worth to note that the delivery of the project through City Leap with other funds linked to social housing decarbonisation funding, funding linked to Grant and Warm Homes and Hugs 2, we have got £58 million worth of projects in delivery since the stand-up of City Leap. We are in year 3 of a 20-year concession. And we have £11 million of projects in pipeline. So just in terms of scale, context, we need to share that. But the reference to this particular underspend is linked to the PSDS funds. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that explanation. So we've got elements of revenue that have been affected, elements of capital, but a long pipeline of capital projects coming forward, including this somewhat delayed. Were there any questions about the report? Councillor Dunn.
Just on that, the pipeline of projects issue and City Leap, I was just wondering, can we have a paper on that at maybe the next meeting that we can scrutinise? On the pipeline of projects, what's going well, what's going badly, what's on the horizon, just a general overview of City Leap projects that we can scrutinise.
Yes,
large-scale renewables.
Sure, those are coming forward. We've had a report on the whole decarbonisation programme already, but we'll see what we can put together that might be appropriate. Thank you.
Yeah, we can do that. We can bring to life the pipeline in terms of where we are. We know that we enter into an annual business plan process with City Leap. We do that anyway. But in relation to giving sight of what we've done, what we are doing, pipeline projects, in terms of large-scale renewables, as we know there are a number of large-scale renewable schemes moving forward in Avonmouth, but we can bring that to life as part of an update for next committee.
Thanks for that. Any further questions? We just are asked to note the report. Are people happy to note the report? I see nods. Thank you very much. That concludes the business of the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone, for your contributions. Right.